We should be good now. I think we're live now. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for those of you that may be watching this now. I didn't really advertise it like I wanted to, but I think this might be kind of cool. Just like all of a sudden a pop up with Dale Baker, my friend here. But today I have a friend of mine. This is all of them are special, but this one is also special because is not only a friend of mine, but I'm a fan of his playing, and I was from the moment that I heard it.
Yeah.
And actually, even before I met him. So, I mean, like many of you, I was already familiar with his music. But Dale Baker is based in Durham, right? You're in Durham, Dale?
Yep. Yep.
And Dale has been playing for decades, been playing drums. I know you play guitar. You've jumped into the singer songwriter deal, and but you've been accompanying musicians and in the music world for decades. You went to the let me see if I can remember this university. Is it North Texas?
There you go. University of North Texas. Yeah.
University of North Texas. Yes, yes. Graduated from the percussion department there,
Well, it's
or is
just
it
the
like
music department. So it's like a bachelor of music is
got
the degree, a BM.
got you? Yeah, yeah, awesome. And that's where you linked up with your bandmates in Sixpence None the Richer, right?
Well, actually, no. I graduated. So I was a percussionist in college. I think you and I talked about that because I wasn't. No one thought of me as a drum set player. So because the school is it was at the time it was like the second best music school in the nation. Now it's like the first number one. I don't know.
Got it.
So I was like, I'm going to go there because Greg Bissonette went there, and I met him at some small concert, and he was like, "Dude, there's one place, and that's where you go." And I'm like, "You're amazing. I want to be like you." And so I go down to school, and there's like 60 drummers, and it's like there's no chance ever that I'm going to be a drum set player at this place because they're all so great.
Wow.
But they didn't have percussionists. So
Ah,
they were looking for percussionists. So if I buy some congas and some timbales and some shakers, boom, I'm in business. I'm a percussionist. And so I was like, all right, great. And then I already had a pretty good knowledge of like mallet instruments just from having played piano. And so I was really quickly able to sort of be in a lot of playing situations because I started playing percussion and I took lessons on congas and
yeah.
took from this guy Frankie Malabé, who's a New York Cuban conguero guy, and took a lot of workshops and things on different styles and played in these world music ensembles. And so most of my college experience was just as a percussionist. But then when I graduated, I had a sort of a come to Jesus moment,
Yeah.
quote unquote, and it was like, wait, my first love is drum set. I really want to be a drum set player. I
Yeah.
love percussion. I love that stuff, but I just want to play in a band. I just want to play drums. So I sold all my percussion stuff and just started playing in bands. And I started playing in reggae bands. And so
Ah,
I started playing behind all these reggae bands in Dallas, Texas. And the way I got hooked up with Sixpence was my roommate had recorded their first demo. And so I kind of met them briefly. And then he was the one that told me they were looking for a new drummer. And that's what started that
wow.
process of auditioning for them and then getting to be their drummer for, I don't know, 7 years or something like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to mention the Sixpence thing, but you said something. I don't know if I knew. So had a background playing a piano.
Yeah. I mean, grew up taking piano lessons. And then when I was from a small town in Missouri, and when I was like, hey, I'm going to go to this music school, all my music teachers, my band director and my piano teacher was like, whoa, 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 wait a second. You're not like, I think they knew what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And they're like, so my piano teacher shifted and started teaching me how to do like harmony and like, you read a melody and you harmonize it, like first year piano stuff. And my band director taught me like first year harmony and theory,
Yeah.
just so I wouldn't have to be worrying about that because they knew that those are the weed out courses.
Uh,
But yeah, I'd been taking piano since I was like in second grade, off and on. I'm not great at all, but
did you mentioned mallets? Did you have were you playing any vibes, any marimba before you went to school?
so I'd done like xylophone and marimba, just stuff for band, but it was
Just for
never.
band?
It
Okay.
wasn't. I didn't know the repertoire. I didn't know that there were like solo pieces you could do. I could just read the music and kind of do it. Um, and I'd never really, and I still don't know how to play vibes correctly, with the hitting it and then dampening it with the mallet. Like there was some of that in college, but I didn't. I had a roommate that was, he came to North Texas being a killer jazz vibraphonist, and I was like, what in the world? God, they're
Yeah.
just, everybody here is so good. And what am I doing here again? It was so depressing.
Wow.
College
That's really
really,
cool, man.
yeah.
I when I started playing instruments, I started in music. I started as a percussionist, but I didn't have like a band background. I didn't take singing lessons or piano lessons when I was younger. When I was a kid, I actually started by way of hip hop, and then I was a dancer. So my world, when I started playing drums and mostly percussion, I started out with like congas and other percussion. There was this missing information that I had when I looked at other musicians or drummers, percussionists that I admired. And what I found out that there was this X factor that I did not know. This is like you don't know what you don't know, right?
Mhm.
There
Yeah.
was this X factor that was there that I was missing, and that was a lot of the percussionists I admired had experience with melody and harmony, right?
Oh,
Not
okay.
just rhythm, but they understood that, and a lot of them had a technical background as far as sight reading is concerned,
Okay.
music theory,
Yeah.
um, rudimentary training. So not knowing that there's this whole other world that they might have had that was a foundation. All I'm seeing is what they're doing, right? It's
Mhm.
kind of like if you watch a current drummer, a contemporary drummer who's a younger guy, and he's amazing, amazing jazz
Mhm.
guy, right? And
Yeah.
he might be listening to someone like, you know, Max Roach or Papa, and all these guys, and Philly Jones, all these guys. He might be pulling from that world, but so you go to study this guy and you're getting it, but there's that one thing that's missing, and that's all this other information. So when I meet people like yourself, for me, I think it's helpful when there's conversations and these other things pop up, because I think that I'm
Uh,
not alone. I think there's other people, especially you and I play in church a lot, right?
yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of percussionists, like these congas behind me, a lot of people that get started in that world sometimes come from a background where that might be their first instrument,
Yeah.
and so they may not know that the reason that a Dale Baker has such an understanding of music and the way that he plays and then why he's able to tune the drums the way he tunes and everything is because of all this other background that he's pulling from, you know so understanding that can kind of help a person not get frustrated, because they're going, oh,
Yeah.
let me look into this.
Yeah, the thing that pulled me into music was melody. So just growing up, and I'm smack dab right in the middle of our country, and there was these country music shows where essentially just cover bands, and
Yeah,
we would go and see them perform. Other people would perform popular music
yeah,
that you would sing along with, And then I went to church, and we were singing hymns. It was like Presbyterian hymns, um, and so without realizing it, melody was always kind of in me, like, and so, and then also because of my early musical experiences, I was thrown into situations where I didn't have the skills yet to actually do anything demonstrable. So they were just like, "Hey, you do that one thing that and just play really quiet." And I was like, "Okay." Um, and so early on, it was like melody and then learning how to listen. And it wasn't until I got out of college that I realized, oh, that's how I stayed in the game. Because a lot of those guys came in from more of a chops background, and I came in from a more of a like, oh, what's my role in this musical ensemble here?
yeah,
How can I best serve? It's not about me; it's about them. I
right.
mean, mixed with that too is I had a pretty low self-image of myself, so I was like, I don't belong in this group. Like everybody I play with is on a level way. So I'm just lucky to be in the room. So thanks for letting me play with you guys, you know. Um, but then also too, the percussion stuff also taught me of, you know, being playing with a drummer, and then as a conga player, it's like, well, he's playing the backbeat. You don't want to do your slap on the backbeat because it's just you're canceling it out. No one's going to hear your slap. So how can you adjust your groove to
Right.
play off of the deliverables the drummer is doing? You know the snare is going to be in the same place every single time. So what can you do? And
Right.
so learning how to sort of listen to the ensemble and find my holes.
Yeah.
And then also just being a big fan of pop music, having grown up listening to pop music and not jazz, and
Yeah.
just, you know, just there's so much great pop drumming out there, and it's all about finding your moment.
Right.
And then, you know, you might get one cool fill per song, if that.
Right.
You know, so what's it going to be? Which one are you going to choose? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
or and then too, I also grew up in the '80s, right? So in the '80s, music was changing, right? So there was a lot of programming, like there were more programmable elements going on. People were getting drum machines, and so
Mhm.
being fascinated with the layers that you could create.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's what I get excited about in recording, is that you don't have to play it all at the same time. Like you can just stack parts and compose your rhythms on top and treat it more like, and I think that's why like when I play, I'm always trying to add a shaker or some other element, because it's like I think about music as, you know, as a programmed drum beat, essentially, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know.
man, I that resonates with me a lot because you're influenced, you're inspired by those synth sounds, you know, the early and the mid 80s. And like myself, I know that I'm often trying to sometimes emulating these sounds, but with organic, as we call them, you know, instruments or things that is just around us, and always trying to chase that sound that I hear in my head,
Yeah.
or discover something new, you know, for to
Mhm.
me anyways.
Yeah.
Uh, but so you Sixpence None the Richer, for those that might be watching, whether they I don't know if anyone's watching while we're live, but this stream is gonna stay up. So in
Okay.
the future, but you know, I know that the band had two recognizable hits that a lot of people are probably familiar with, that are to this day probably in the top 20 wedding songs of all time, at least here in America.
Yeah.
You know, I know it was a couple years ago. They were still like, one of them I think was still in like the top 10 wedding. And that it's Kiss Me and
Hmm.
There She Goes, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you got Kiss Me. I don't remember how the rest of Kiss Me goes, but
Yeah.
I know There She Goes. A lot of people will probably be familiar with that. There she goes again. So I mean, you hear, you still to this day you hear, that's a huge pop song. And I remember that, to me is like, I think I might have been in high school. When did those songs come out?
So they kind of reached their peak, 99, 2000.
Okay, so I was in the military by then, but I was for some reason I was thinking it might have been like 95, 96. But yeah, you
Yeah, well, it depends on like what niche or what segment of the consumer audience you are part of.
got
So
it.
some
Got it.
of those songs were heard, you know, 2 years previous to
Okay.
when the rest of America heard it. So if you were part of a Christian youth group, or you bought your music from a Christian bookstore, chances are you heard that stuff like a good year and a half before anybody knew of Sixpence, you know, on a larger level. So so it's possible that you
So
were.
was it kind of a pseudo, was it a Christian band?
Yeah, so Sixpence started as a Christian band, as an
Okay.
alternative Christian band, and then they were signed to a label that was started by a man, Steve Taylor, who was getting his funding from one of the larger Christian music labels, and his goal was to create an SK or DreamWorks SKG sort of model, where you would have film and literature, and you'd have music, and it'd all be under this creative umbrella. And that, but in it would be, there's a book around that time called Roaring Lambs, written by this guy named Bob Briner, who's a friend of Steve Taylor's. And so the idea was that you don't use your talent to evangelize or proselytize, you just do good work. and people will find out. People will be just do good work.
Right, right, right.
Do
No, I
the thing you're called to do and do it well,
yeah,
and that was kind of always our thing, is that we as a band, we just wanted to create cool stuff, and then because and that was personal, right? So that it was reflective of who we are or whatever. I mean, I didn't write. I had some co-writes on some of the songs, but the idea was that we're not trying to be someone other than we're not, and because we weren't, we didn't. None of us felt like we were oh evangelists, so we would do youth group shows and people would be like, yeah, you're going to give the altar call tonight, right? You're going to give the talk that's going to convince everybody that Jesus is the way. No, we're not. You've got somebody here at the church that does that, right? Because like he's studied his whole life to be that person. We've studied our whole life to be like really good musicians. So we're going to do our best tonight to like really be great. And if we want to have a one-on-one conversation, we don't have a problem with that. But getting on stage and being like, thus saith whatever, no, that's not for us. And so I think because of that, like we never were like on record as
I mean, I didn't know that.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah.
I didn't know that. So
that's cool.
I can't remember the exact I guess I can't remember when I first heard the music. I thought it was in high school. Maybe it was when I was overseas. My first duty station was in Germany.
Oh, okay.
I was out there for a few years.
Yeah.
So maybe it was during, it probably was during that time, come to think of it. But I wasn't, I didn't come up in a youth group. I didn't grow up going to church on a regular basis. Every now and then we did, in the Los Angeles area, but I wasn't in that world. And so now that you tell me that, I'm remembering a conversation with a friend here that actually clued me in that your band came out of a Christian background, and I had no idea back then. I was just someone who was not a Christian, but I heard the music, and I was
and that music wasn't, There She Goes is that's a cover of a song by a band, that has none of that has anything to do with faith or spirituality. It's just they're just songs, and they're like pop songs, most of the music that we were creating was really self-reflective and more, in the genre of just indie rock at the time. But, for those of us that grew up in a Christian environment, we were
groundbreaking stuff, I should say groundbreaking, but it was definitely different, probably.
Yeah, well, there was an undercurrent of sort of alternative, sort of Christian music happening, and so Sixpence was part of that. There's a lot of really great stuff coming out of California, and then Seattle. But I think people's ideas of what faith-based music could be was changing around that time, sort of, late 80s. Early 90s. And Steve Taylor, the guy who started the label, he's very much a precursor to a lot of that thinking of.
So what was the name of the label?
It was called Squint Entertainment.
Squint Entertainment. Okay, that's fascinating, man. So you were there you were out of Dallas for a little while in school, and then you ended up in Nashville. Is that where you ended up?
Yeah, so the band moved en masse to Nashville. Our booking agent was based out of Chicago, and our manager was based out of Western New York. And so we were always driving through Nashville to get to either of those two places. And strangely enough, all of our shows were usually like up north and never really in Texas, So I'd been playing in the Dallas music scene for years, and I was like, we got to play the clubs. We got to do these places. And it was like, well, they don't pay, and the booking agent in Chicago could get us a really good paying gig in like Elmhurst, and it was like, all right, well, we'll drive, 18 hours to do whatever it was,
And when you're young, especially when you're young and you don't have children, that can be all steam, all gears ahead, right?
I grew up going on family vacations and driving all over the place with my family. And so being in a band, in a van, mapping out using paper maps and mapping out your route, all that stuff. It was just like the dream of a lifetime. It was like, oh my God, I'm getting paid to do my
Yeah.
to live my dreams.
Yeah.
And it felt that way, in year one, the same way it felt in like, once when nobody knew us, it was like, I can't believe I'm getting to do this, and then we got a little more well known. And so it was like, I still can't believe I'm getting to do this. It's amazing. Right.
It is an incredible thing to be a part of a team, a band, or an actual team. It's very familial, right? Family, that orient, and that I for me it's I when I first started playing with the band and different bands after I got out of the military, it was something that I don't know if I longed for, but it was kind of missing, and I enjoyed it. I got a lot of that from ministry, but to
Mm.
do that as a musician, it reminded me of my time, when I was in the military, and just having that collegial, um, you know, thing that we're doing. We were all up on stage, and we were there for each other, whether it was a festival or an event. We're like, we got each other's back. You missed that note, no problem. I got you right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all looking out for each other in those ways and beyond. You know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah. So I want to talk to you about some shakers, because you and I have kind of geeked out a little bit about some of the stuff that you have done, and I know you've used like coffee cans and
I got some stuff right over there I could
yeah.
show you.
I want to see it. Show it to
You know,
us.
we got it. Okay. Let's see. There it is.
You could bring it to us too.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well.
And we can hear you over. I could hear you when you walked over there too. So
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
talking, it's fine.
All right. So you posted something the other day, maybe it was yesterday, about BBs. You found
Yeah.
some BBs. Yeah.
Yep.
And I was like, oh yeah. And I got to get some of those. So I did. So I had some people that were into airsoft. The airsoft guns are like plastic pellets.
Yes.
And so I am a big fan. I don't know if I can grab it or not, but those big Brazilian shakers that are like metal tubes.
Oh yes.
And then there's just super loud, right?
Yeah.
So I love the sound of those things, but I've got one and it's so loud. Like it's not practical for anything,
Not Sunday morning service, right?
It's just too much. So I saw like at Whole Foods, they had these olive oil cans and I'm like, I think it's the same metal or it's close enough. And so I was like, all right, I need olive oil anyway. So I'll get the olive oil. And when it's done, I'm going to rinse it out. And then I'm going to fill it full of, like I usually use like popcorn or like rice, but I bought some airsoft. So this shaker was actually a little more expensive than your BB shaker because of all the pieces involved. But so I put airsoft pellets in here. And then it's this really great sort of, and it's kind of heavy, so it's a little more sort of like you can kind of, it's like it's got a little more heft to it. But there's a lid on it, a screw top lid, so I can unscrew it, and if I needed to take a shot out, I could. And so I'm like, this is brilliant.
So you could. What I love about that though, and the crunchiness of it too, is you can create all these backbeats. I mean, it's you've got a shaker and a snare right there.
And then another thing I like to do. This one's it's all beat up primarily because like I'll do a thing where I'll like bungee. Sometimes I've not done this in a while, but I'll bungee cord it to my bass drum, and so then I might, so it's like a one shot shaker.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a rhythm with that and doing something else with your left foot, it kind of sounds like you're hearing a shaker, but it's a lot more controllable than. And when you've got your hands sort of
already tied up
clasped with this, you can't grab a crash cymbal, And so if I've got this mounted, it's like, okay, that kind of sounds shakerish, and then I can hit my crash cymbal if I need to, or whatever, it gives me some options. But yeah.
That's cool. Do you think that's made of the same thinness or thickness of like a vegetable can or soup can, or is it thinner? Or
I feel like it's thinner. Like it feels. I don't know if it's steel. I don't think it's aluminum. I mean, it really looks like that Brazilian
like it might be steel, might be some kind of
Maybe it is. Yeah, like it feels. It doesn't. Maybe it is. Maybe it's like old school steel soup can sort of
yeah,
material. You know.
huh.
Um,
Wow. And I noticed that when you hit it a second ago and you hit it off to the side, it made a completely different sound that it did my ears perked up for a second.
yeah.
And
Right.
that's what I love about that stuff is it's there's so many variations within that one instrument, you
Yeah.
know.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I like about the videos you post and stuff because the way you play a shaker, like you and I could both try to do the same rhythm with this shaker, and it's going to sound different. Like
Yeah.
you're going to have a way of doing it, and I'm going to have a way of doing it, and
Yeah.
that's formed by all of our years and our influences and the things that we've done, right? And so it's like our personality.
Comes through.
Um, we hear things in the instrument that um, trigger parts of our personality. We're like, I'm going to go with that sound. I like that sound as opposed to this sound, and I think that's what's so much fun. It's like you get to this point and it's like, um, oh, that's cool. I really dig what you're doing. I can't do it. My thing is completely different, but it's like, it's inspiring because you realize how much your own personality is wrapped up in your sounds and the things
Yes.
that you play. Right. And, um, yeah. So
Yeah, that's what everything that you said. It makes me think about the whole the competitive nature of things that sometimes creeps up. I don't think that being competitive to a certain extent is bad. I don't think it is, especially if it comes from a place of inspiring me to get off my butt and hey, this dude
yeah.
is about to be in a whole nother
Mhm.
stratosphere if I don't get to working. But the thing is, like when you look across at all these different guitarists, we know you hire a different guitarist because his tone it might be something different, the genres that he play. So for me, even if I can play the congas or the bongos well, I may seek out a conga player because they're gonna come up with stuff that I wouldn't even have thought of that. I
Yeah.
wouldn't even have went that direction. And so you're right. Your personal experiences, your creativity, the things that you pay attention to, those are the things that make us unique. You might have saw the color red on a painting when I'm paying attention to all of the green,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So I just find all that beautiful. Show me another. You got anything
Oh
else there?
yeah. So I was going to show you. Well, so I got like a bottle of M&Ms for Christmas, and so
Ah,
it's just like anytime there's like a solid plastic container or
yes.
metal thing, it's like okay, cool. I don't know. I'm going to just put some rice and corn in there right now,
Yeah.
but I know I can use it down the road. So it's like this is like
Yeah.
yeah, really soft and sort of like an egg shaker. So it's not like anything I'd use on a regular basis, but it's like, yeah, these little M&M things are great. But the other thing I was going to show you real quick is this. Here's a. I don't know if you can see this. Let's see here.
Yeah.
So this is
Oh,
like this. I'm using this as a side snare. Here's my regular snare.
yeah.
So this is a
Oh,
bucket. It's a it's a paint bucket, and so it has this little snare attachment
look at that.
that goes in there, but it's like a Lowe's paint bucket, and then Remo makes this head right that is pre-tuned, and so
Yeah.
it's like this is like a frame drum, right? Uh, but then if you let me find some. Oh, one second.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, bud.
So it's kind of like a mess in my room. We were gonna bring cardboard boxes over to put everything in there, but we forgot to bring cardboard boxes. So can I come back and bring cardboard boxes and put everything in there?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's fine. Yeah.
All right, we're done with
Okay.
everything.
Just text me when you're on your way. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
All right,
Okay.
sounds good. See ya.
Sorry.
No, you're
Uh,
good. You're good.
we're moving some stuff around here. So,
Yeah. I had forgot. I was gonna tell everybody that Dale is in the middle of a few different projects. So, but
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, let me go get some popcorn. I'll be right back.
Yeah. 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 So I had saw if you're watching this that particular Remo head there. I'm gonna put a link in the description of where you can get that. But they do sell that. I think that came out a couple years ago, maybe before. But I had noticed it, and they have different sizes, and you can just place it on a paint bucket, a water bucket, the different size things that you could just place it on, and you can clip that snare in there, and voila, you've got however many different drums you're gonna make. So it's pretty cool, man. While Dale is looking for that, we mentioned that I had posted something on Instagram the other day about BBs, and so I have these in my hand. That was actually these. Oh, let focus there. They're actually just regular copper BBs. But one thing I was gonna say, Dale, is that I was gonna post this as well. Is that since the BBs have, it's just a pop top. If you wanted to take some of them out just to change the sound, that's what's cool about doing something like this, right?
Yeah.
That now you have the container, and some of these plastic containers are made of the same material that those Mino and LP shakers are made out of.
Yeah, I know.
But now you have a pop top, and you can change and adjust the sound.
Yeah.
Beauty of it.
Yeah. Did you see that documentary? There's a percussionist, and I don't know his name, but he was this dude who moved to LA, and his story, it's like on YouTube somewhere. And he was like, yeah, I didn't have any money. My wife was really into these supplements. And so he's like, I realized that I can take these supplement bottles and I put their bottoms together, tape the bottoms together, and then I've got two lids on either side that I can put equal amounts of plastic beads in. So he's like, I didn't have enough money for shakers. Right. So, and he shows you this shaker that he made, sounds like an LP shaker, whatever. And he goes, this shaker's been on, and he starts listing like all these songs that we know, right? Like Michael Jackson hits, and just, like the hits that we all grew up listening to. It's like, wait, I don't need a Rhythm Tech shaker to do this. And it was, and like, you totally did that. And he's like, and he goes on and he says, yeah, I was so poor, I would just make stuff. And then the sort of the big moment of the video of the documentary is that the sound that you hear in horror movies of this sort of like, it's like spacey, and you're just like, oh God, something horrible is about to happen. Yeah. It's like this big sheet of aluminum, or
like a thunder sheet.
It's a thunder sheet, yeah. And this thing is massive, and he's like, we hung it from from the ceiling in a studio, and then I take a rubber ball.
Yeah, the bouncy ball.
I take a bouncy ball and put a stick in it, and then I do the thing on it, and it creates these harmonics, and it's the scariest thing. And he's like, I've made so much money off of this thing I got from the hardware store, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna stop buying my percussion stuff,
That's awesome, dude. We gotta find out what documentary that is.
Yeah, do you know my friend Mike McKee was the one that told me about it, and
okay.
If you're not talking,
if you find out, let me know, and I'll add it to the description of this
video.
Oh,
okay, yeah. So anyway,
I can't remember what those things are called. Once you show me that, I've got like 5 of those. The Super Ball. That's what they call it.
Oh yeah.
Super bouncy ball. It's just a bouncy ball.
Yeah.
Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So those guys usually just go to the store and buy as many of these bouncy balls from the toy store, and then just do that. Dude, I've done it before in like my big bass drums and all this other stuff, and just the sound is just,
yeah.
Oh man.
It's like doing the moan on a conga, right? You like or like a tambourine roll, like a thumb roll on a tambourine. It's just, you've got a mallet that is doing the resistance,
Yeah, show me what you got there.
Okay, so you got this pre-tuned head,
okay,
which is not cheap. I mean, it's about 3 or 4 times the price of a regular head, but it's pre-tuned. Yeah. But then you can use it as a frame drum, whatever. But I thought it was like cool because you can just put and just like do like make it. So you can, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. You could. Just because of the randomness of the popcorn kernels, it's like, it sounds like a snare or sounds like a shaker maybe, but you're not sure how the popcorn's going to respond. But But wave drums were a thing there for a while. Like,
Yes.
everybody had to buy a wave drum, and
Yep.
so I was like, oh, here's my wave drum if I ever need one.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah,
Man, that's that. See, that to me, that's like the equivalent of learning different rhythms versus learning the stuff that makes up the rhythm. You should continue to learn different rhythms. Sometimes you have to learn the actual how to play the rhythm. But if you get stuck in this moment where, okay, I got that, give me another beat. Well, what? And then you can't like make up your own rhythm or manipulate the rhythm very well. Then it's kind of like, okay, you want to go back and go to the fundamentals. So for this, a percussionist, the percussionists that we admire, that we look up to, we come up listening to, like that gentleman you were talking about, a lot of those guys, their big thing that they draw from, and the reason that they're hired, and the reason they have that it factor for them, is what the sound, their ear. They're looking for a sound. What you see them play is the result, right, of what was going on in their mind. So if we can tune in and focus on sound and what makes those sounds, then inevitably we're going to be able to create all of these different rhythms. We're going to come up with different instruments. So I think the bigger, more valuable asset as the percussionist is the creativity. It's the creativity and the giving yourself freedom, right? Permission to try little experiments like that one.
yeah,
When you
yeah,
have that and you're giving yourself, that takes a lot of freedom. That took a lot of permission for you to do that. There was no, I mean, what did you just do? You just put popcorn into this lid. I mean, what is that? But the big thing that I take away from that is some people wouldn't even have thought to go and do that because, oh, that's dumb, or oh, that doesn't have anything to do with it, or but can you do that? So man,
mm,
having that freedom to do that is what separates those guys, like that guy in that documentary you were talking about. At least that's what I believe.
yeah. No, it's like the same, like the Coke bottles on "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough."
Yes.
And you're like, oh, I'm hearing cowbells, right? And you go out and you buy all these cowbells, and it's like, no, that was a ribbon mic with pencils and a Coke bottle.
Oh,
And it's like, wait, they're doing that?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
so what else can I do? And then I think also some of this comes from my lack of technique.
Okay.
So I don't think of myself as a technical drummer,
Uh-huh.
and I've never been drawn to like chops. Or when I've ever tried to do something that sounds cool chop wise, I can't ever pull it off because it's not deep inside of me. What's deep inside of me are textures and sounds and
Yeah, yeah.
um, personality. And so I feel like for me, trying to find something that sounds like, because the stuff I'm into is just meat and potatoes.
Right.
So it's like, well, how many snare drum? Every snare drum sounds the same, but you need that role represented if you're playing a backbeat. So it doesn't have to be a snare; it could be popcorn in a pre-tuned head.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to hear it like it's a snare drum. Like they heard the Coke bottles as like cowbells. But
Yeah.
I like that thing of like, I know what you want to hear, but we've all heard that. It's like it's been overdone. So how can I come up with another sound
Something
that
fresh.
serves the same purpose,
Yeah.
but hopefully draws the listener in a little more? It's kind of like doing Foley work or sound design work on a movie. It's like,
Yes.
um, and I've known some drummers that do that. They'll bring a bucket of sand and a shovel, and they're like, "What's this for?" It's like, "This is the snare drum. I need you to record me going." Yeah, it's like, who does that? Here, I brought some chains. Here's the we're going to use the chains as the backbeat, or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
yeah,
then it's funny because then we turn around and then try to emulate that in the live experience, and it ends up becoming a whole nother thing. So it's like that creativity is important because that inspires a whole nother generation. Just like the Prince drum stuff, right? That
yeah,
whipped up compression at the end, that gated reverb thing going on. And now, how many of us now, when we want that sound, tune our snare and try to put a wallet on the snare or try to get this and that to
yeah,
get this sound that was actually created from technology, you know, and
Yeah.
it's the same thing I think with that. So, it has its place because it's something fresh. And then later on, we tried to emulate that. But yeah, I just, I really nerd out on all of that because I think that's the art. I mean, you know, someone can just get a drum machine if they want to create a track, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they can do a really good job. They can do a really good job. It's like you don't need me. You know what I
Right.
mean? But
Right.
what you do need is what you said. My personality, you know, that
Well,
uniqueness.
yeah, I think yeah, right. And it comes down to your spirit. I think when you're younger and you're competitive, you think there's only one job and there's only one way to do that job. And I think as you get older, you realize I'm unique and that my spirit, my personality, who I am is wrapped up in what I do. And that's what makes compelling music are the relationships that you have with the other musicians or the relationship you're going to bring, you're going to bring yourself to your interpretation of the music. And I think that's what makes, popular music or, non-classical music so much fun is because it's another level of community building or just community. Like I feel like when I make music now, I'm having conversations with my friends. We're not talking words, we're playing songs, but it just feels like my presence. I'm so much more present to them and to the music. And I'm not thinking about the technique. I'm just thinking about how much I enjoy being alive and getting to be a vessel for things to happen or what, and so um, uh, yeah, and so all of that's wrapped up in like doing the self work to be like, you know what, I'm not William, but I'm me, and I'm just as valid as William, like and so in that, now that I'm secure in who I am and I don't need to get your attention. Now what sounds like fun? What's grabbing your attention? I
Yes.
know it's a popcorn in a pre-tuned head. That sounds fun to me. And I don't care if anybody likes that. I like it. But that's what makes me, right? And so then if I can be that centered and that sort of grounded when I go into the musical, when I go with other musicians or just, with other people, it's like, can I, now that I don't have to get your attention, now that I don't have to steal the focus or manipulate the conversation, then true communion can happen, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so we can make music using our words, like we can have great conversation using our words, we can have great conversation using our music, right? And I think the thing that comes with that is presence, and that's something I don't think you can teach in a music school,
Right.
because it's all about, when you're learning your technique, it's all boxes you got to check. Did I learn that groove? Did I learn that groove? All right. Did I pass that test? Did I learn that harmony? But at some point, if you stay with it long enough, and I think it's true with any sort of discipline, it starts to become an art form, and starts to be, yeah, I don't know. You start
Mm,
to really be grateful for, the opportunity to do what you do.
yeah.
Um,
Wow. That's a lot. There's a lot of wisdom
sorry.
packed in what you said. No, no, that's really good. Everything that you're saying there is tied in. Even what we were saying earlier. There's once you get past the proving of something, now you can really be who you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I and you don't have to realize that you're doing that. You don't have to know that you're doing that to be doing it. And like you said, when you're young, sometimes you're in this vein of this is the way it's supposed to be. So
Yeah.
now I'm trying to meet that expectation, that standard. But you may not realize by doing that, you're missing out on so much more. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing,
Yeah.
the techniques and the things that are inherent in it, but the at some point it becomes overkill, right? And if you already have checked the box on okay, it's okay,
Yeah.
now you can get to all the stuff that you didn't realize was out of your bounds. You thought you were free, but you really weren't free. And I think these are the things that come through sometimes in the music especially when we talk about pop music, and in the world of Christianity or the Christian church, there's these terms like secular music, right? But in that world, I think these are the things that we actually kind of like with bands like Sting and the Police, or other bands. There was conflict within these bands. These are people that kind of come up together sometimes,
Yeah.
and they're in the studio hashing out ideas, or sometimes they're just allowing themselves to just kind of experiment. And sometimes it's very intentional what we hear on the record. Sometimes they were accidents that come through,
Yeah.
and they just allow it to come through. Or sometimes they're like, these guys out of England or somewhere else or here in the States that came up with each other for years, and they
Yeah.
actually were very friends, and they argued with each other, they supported one another, and so that comes eventually comes through the music.
Yeah.
But your when I hear your drums, on a stage and you play, one of the first things I noticed was tone, the tone of the drums that you that were coming out of your drums.
Mm.
Obviously, there's a lot of fundamental technique for you to even be able to support that tone, and it to sound musical.
Yeah.
But for me, I that's one of the things that I honed in. I was like, wow. So that, but to have a tone like that
Mm.
that is refreshing takes a lot of presence, right? Like caring. Like I care about how this sounds, but at the same time, it's not that I care because it's made out of birch. Ooh, this is a birch. This is a mahogany. This is
Yeah.
a maple kit from
Yeah.
such and such, manufacturer. All of these things are there, but it's because birch tends to have this kind of tone, not because it's lesser in value, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Calfskin tone tends to have this sound, not because it's cooler, but
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's practical to the gig, right?
Right.
And I just love some of the stuff that you've done. The last time I saw you at a local church where I'm at here at Christ Community Church, and the setup that you had, there was so much tone,
Oh,
and it all of the kit itself didn't match.
right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there were different companies, some of it was newer, some of it was older. But man, dude, it was just beautiful to look at, but it was also beautiful to hear. And I love that. That's what I love about this stuff we're talking about, the different shakers, the different tones. What
Yeah.
else you got before we wrap up? What you got anything else going on there?
What do I
Any
have?
shakers, anything you've been experimenting with?
Well, let's just talk about tone for a second.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate everything you're saying, but I got to tell you, I don't care about any of that.
Yeah.
And
That's what makes
but
it
the
sound so
but
good.
the problem is this: I used to care about it. So that person you just described, that was me, and I would obsess over every little thing. I try to tune my drums perfectly. I got maple drums, I was all into that, and I'd go into the studio, and my drums would sound horrible coming through my headphones. And so I went and talked to a guy, and he showed me how to tune the drums. I still couldn't get it. So then over the years, what I've done is I realized, oh, it's barely tight enough. And I tell people you're essentially just trying to make them sound like cardboard boxes. And I know that in the cardboard box sound that I'm going for, there's a little bit of tone, and that tone can get picked up by the microphone, which is all that matters, right? So as long as that thing that's coming through the microphone works, great. But this person that you're talking about that obsesses over the stuff, it's like, I didn't know that. I grew up listening to Yamaha recording custom drums. Those were birch drums. That's the sound I love. So when I had a chance to get a birch kit, that's, all the drums I use the most are birch. And I can deal with that and make those drums sound however I need them to sound. But in that, I'm always like, is that good enough? Yeah, it sounds like thud, thud, thud. Okay, cool. And is the snare like any weird overtones? No, cool. Put some tape on it, whatever. Sounds great. And it's sad because I should care way more than I do.
But what's funny, Dale? I don't know about you, but the older I get, the more, and that's why the tone is important to me in just what we're talking about. What's the sound that I think is working? What's
Yeah.
the sound that I think is cool?
Hmm.
That's what matters. I'm paying attention. If I'm playing a shaker, I'm paying attention to every little area of my hand because I'm trying to manipulate a sound and I'm hearing something come back to me going, "Ooh, I like that. Keep your hand there. Where was your hand last you did that? Oh, I don't like that. Don't go back there." But
Yeah.
I'm more into that, and I'm just every year I'm less and less into this company, that
Mhm.
company. How
Yeah.
much is this worth? How much does this cost?
Yeah.
And I'm finding when it comes to drums, and I think this is all instruments, period. But when it comes to drumming and percussion, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, right? It just, I mean, you're hitting, scraping, shaking.
Right.
That's what you're doing. And a lot of the stuff that we purchase comes from people somewhere that came up with something. So the company wanted to find a way to commoditize that,
Yeah.
if that's the proper term. And that's not a bad thing. That's just they have a business and they're pushing that. But it's important to know on the end user, that that's what they're doing. So you too, so that you don't overvalue the label, right? Like
Yeah.
brushes. I love using brushes. I love brushwork. But man, these were fly swatters back in the day, right?
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
were. Somebody picked up and said, let's try to do what the tap dancers are doing, or let's use these fly
Yeah.
swatters. And then the drum companies came later and made them a thing, you know?
Yeah. It's. I mean, it's cool that you and I we've lived in a generation where, yeah, LP percussion was founded, I think, because the Latin music instruments were the quality was just it was all over the map. So they're like, let's quality control these things, and so, um, but
And find a
now
way to
they,
access them too. Yeah.
what's that?
And find a way to access them.
And yeah, and we'll make them more accessible. Yeah, and so now we've gone full circle, and it's like, no, I hear that, but I want to go back to my pots and pans because that sounds to me like what I want, which
Yeah.
was where it all started from, you know, before there was an LP or a rhythm tech,
Cowbells.
right?
Cowbells.
Yeah, right. Um, so uh, um, so I think that's what's really fun is like this all started because people were like, I want a sound, I want a scrapey thing, I want a rattle, I want a clink, and then companies were like, okay, we'll give you that clink and we'll make it a consistent clink, and now we're all going, I just want originality, I want my personality to shine through, so let's,
Yeah.
you know, so
I've had this ongoing fascination with Brazilian percussionists, right? I mean, I love percussionists from all over the world, but I have this current fascination and obsession over Brazilian music, right? And especially that stuff coming out of the Northeast, Bahia, all of that, samba, batucadas, xixalo, choro, all of that. But what their Peru with the cajon, Cuba with their cajones and the congas. At the end of the day, the brilliance is the tone. Here
uh-huh.
you had a group of people that were told you can't play your instrument. They had limited resources. So they found stuff on the docks, the shipping docks, and they looked for a tone, and they were expert craftsmen, they were expert luthiers, they were really good with their hands. People
Mhm.
that were really good with their hands took resources just like the steel drum.
Yeah, yeah,
That comes from someone who has a sound they're looking for matched with expert craftsmanship and crafting a tone. And that is not limited, is I probably what we're really getting at is not limited to capitalism. you know
yeah,
in
yeah,
and of itself, I don't have a problem with capitalism. I don't have a problem with marketing, and
right.
so you and I can go to a store and buy something. There's good and bad and everything, right? But at the end of the day, that's what they're doing, is they're taking the brilliance that is in looking for that tone, that expert craftsman. So, definitely what you're saying and I'm saying, there's nothing wrong with the having refined instruments,
Yeah,
good sounding quality instruments, right? But that good quality can be in a pot and pan,
mhm.
because that's where that came from, you know. But Yeah, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I geek out on all of that stuff.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, to kind of try to wrap it up a little bit,
Hmm.
I think the thing that drew me to music, and then also is the thread through percussion, like what you're talking about, is are these small communities, like music as a means of community building. So whether it's faith-based music like a church, or it's the steel drumming, or it's the cajones or whatever. Like I'm not a musicologist. I'm not any of that, but there's a shared lived experience.
Yeah.
And for me, it was going to these cover band, these music shows, but they would have the community stand up. Oh, hey, the Baker family's here. Hey guys, stand up. Everybody, hey, yeah, Don's whatever sells whatever. Everybody clap for him. Or they would say, everybody say hi to your neighbor. And so you'd say hi to your neighbor, and so there was this sense of community. And I think that's the that feeling of love and respect and connection is what I think ultimately pulled me further into the music world. Because
Yeah.
it's like I felt loved and connected to my fellow human being, and I wanted more of that. And so how do you get that? And then um, and so I think that's the thing. How do we keep connecting? How do we keep reminding each other who we are, and how wonderful it is to be alive right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
To quote Hamilton, right? Yeah,
Yeah, man.
right.
It's true, man. I mean, at the end of the day, this is what I believe that we're called to do. Where we are, what is the word for it? We're imitating our maker, our creator. He creates, we create. And there's a longing for us to be creative in whatever we do. I'm not one of those that gets a little too esoteric in the whole creativity
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
I've been painting and drawing and making music for almost all my life, so I'm all about it. But there is at the same, I don't get too deep into that, but at the same time, there is something inside of us that I believe is created to go out there and create things and manipulate, because that's what our maker has done. He created
yeah,
us,
yeah,
and we do that.
yeah.
And there's great purpose. I think there's a great sense of purpose when we're doing that. Whether it's being an electrician, or whether it's being a painter or percussion, like what we're doing, you know, when we're just creating and allowing ourselves to create. Um,
Or that whatever it is that brings you joy, like, so there's a lot of joy. Like I got into music because it gave me a feeling of joy.
yeah,
And so just to always be reminded of that, is a good thing.
yeah. And that, man, it's awesome hearing that from people like yourself that have reached such a level of success, even as we see over your right shoulder, that platinum album
There,
there.
yeah, there we go.
Oh
That
man.
thing. Yeah.
And you wear all of that, man, brilliantly. God has blessed you, and I know it's a work, it's a life work. And actually, to be honest, life has a way of humbling us, even when we're not. But you are, man. You're an inspiration.
Oh man, likewise, man. I just love you, man. I wish we lived closer so we could make more
Yeah,
music together. So we'll have
yeah.
to figure it out. So
We're gonna do that, man. And thanks for Adrian for chiming in on the chat there. Appreciate that, and all of you that will probably be watching this in the future. Appreciate Dale Baker. Check him out, Dale. You do. I know you have a YouTube channel, but most of your work is at Durham Drum Lessons.
yeah, Durham, Durham drumlessons.com, and that's the best way to get a hold of me, or to, you know, I mean, you can just search my name, you'll find all sorts of random drum stuff I've done. Some of it's great, some of it's not so great. So
Oh man, dude, you've done some amazing stuff, and I know currently you've been playing with Jess Ray and
yeah,
Julian Hart, which, if any of you are not familiar with them, and you're into like a singer songwriter, genre, they are brilliant songwriters and musicians.
And yeah, and there's a couple churches like so. There's a church in Raleigh called Church on Morgan, and they have a video. They post videos of their services, and so I've been playing music there. That Taylor plays there, and so we've been doing videos all throughout COVID for that church. And then there's another church called Cross Point Church in Cary, North Carolina, and they've been doing video services, and so I'll record drum tracks for them. And we've been doing that this whole past year. And so there's videos of me out there. A lot of the church stuff it's not easily linkable. So it's been hard to sort of keep,
well,
keep
I'll put
tabs on
your
all that.
website
But
down in the description here, and then I'll try to find some of that other stuff and put it down in the description below. And I know you're also on Instagram at Dale Baker, right?
Dale Baker Drummer.
Dale Baker Drummer. Yeah. Dale Baker's the dude. Check him out, man. Dale, thank you so much, man, for chatting.
Thanks, William.
And we're gonna do this soon, because I know this is gonna be some popular stuff. All this DIY stuff that we were talking about, man. This is where the gold's at.
Yeah. So thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. It's good to see you.
Likewise, man. God bless you all. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Until next time, God bless you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you, and I'll see you soon.